It is with gratitude that I introduce to you author, activist, grief recovery specialist, and award-winning professor emeritus of natural resources and ecology and evolutionary biology from the University of Arizona. Please welcome Dr. Guy R. McPherson.
Let me tell you about millennials for a minute. I'm told all the time that they must hate me for giving them the terminal diagnosis, you're destroying their future. And furthermore, why don't you take out a 50-year mortgage on your house? So you'd have $1 bazillion, right? And the time you won't be able to pay it back, so you win. So this is 25-year-old Serena Raphael from Western Australia, and she says, you completely liberated me. That's the first thing. She said, I knew I'd been lied to my entire life. She told me a story about coming home from college one day and finding her housemate locked in the bathroom. And she tried to get her housemate to open the door, and finally her housemate opened the door. And Serena found her covered in tears and blood, trying to commit suicide because she'd been lied to at college again today. Because her professors told her, you're going to have to fix it. You're going to have to fix it. We weren't paying attention. We're driving down the car. We weren't paying attention at all. We heard the thump thump. We look in the rearview mirror. Oh, the dog is dead. And you're telling the millennials they have to bring it back to life. We killed the puppy. And they have to fix it. Serena is taking action. At 25 years old, wiser than almost anybody else I know, and we've never even met. She is also adopting these 3 messages that I relay. Remain calm, or for some people, get your ass there to begin with, because some people aren't even calm ever. You know about them, right? So get to the point of being calm, somehow, some way, and then remain calm, recognizing that nothing is under control. Nothing is under our control. What do we really control? Turn the lights on, turn the lights off. In a room, not for the world. What do we really control? We influence a relatively few people in our daily and weekly lives. We can make those people miserable if we want. We might be able to improve their lot a little. We might be able to show a little compassion. We might be able to have reasonable conversations with those people and impact their lives positively, and we almost certainly can impact their lives negatively. But for the most part, we don't have much control. In fact, it was Van Jones in late August or early September, Van Jones, who went on to become President Obama's first green jobs czar for about 6 months, who said, he goes to Davos a lot, and so in this essay, which is found at Hope Dance, and posted, I think, September 1st, 2007, maybe September 2nd, and he says, I go to Davos and I hang out with the Gateses and with the Buffetts and with the Clintons, and I interact with all these people, and he says, you think they're in charge, but they're not. The big secret is when they go to work each day, they don't know what to do. Think about that. They don't know what to do. These are the people we think are pulling the strings of empire, right? That are controlling the whole show. They don't know what to do. He says, and this is the punchline, they're juggling chickens and chainsaws trying to get through another day. Juggling chickens and chainsaws trying to get through another day, just like you and me, hoping the whole house of cards doesn't fall down on their watch. Remain calm. Nothing is under control. Secondly, even in a culture of mediocrity, especially in a culture of mediocrity, pursue excellence. You only have to report to one person. You only have the face in the mirror at the end of the day. You don't need to report to your partner, or to your children, or to your parents, or to your God. You need only report to you. At the end of the day, if you can look in the mirror and say, I pursued excellence today, and I made a mistake here, and I made a mistake there, and I ruined the day of that person, and those things that went wrong. But I really gave it a shot, and for the most part, I got there. I'd give myself an 87% today. Look yourself in the mirror at the end of every day. Take stock. How'd you do? Did you pursue excellence? You can tell if you did because it probably cost you quite a bit. And third, I encourage the pursuit of love. It sounds so wacky, especially coming from a so-called scientist. Do what you love. Millennials come up to me all the time, people who are in college currently, when I speak on college campuses, and they come up to me after my talk and they say, what should I do? And I say, well, there's no should. And what do you love? And that freaks them out. And they say, well, I'm a business major. I said, yeah, but what do you love? And they say, well, they look around like somebody's going to be listening. I really like playing music. So I said, why don't you find a way to play music? Well, my parents. Okay, stop. Do what you love. Yeah, you might have to make some sacrifices along the way. You might have to make some compromises. You might not be able to play in the garage with your buddies all day, every day. I'm not suggesting that at all. All of us at some level have to jump on the hamster wheel, right? All of us at some level have to make a buck to get through the day, because money apparently is the most important thing there is. But do we have to do it every day, every hour, every minute? Do we have to be on the hamster wheel? Or can we take an hour off every day compared to what we do today and spend it with our children, spend it with the people we love? Instead of working 7 days a week, which I did for an entirely too long career, there's 168 hours in the week. 168 hours. Many, many weeks I was working 120 of them. That's the very definition of insanity. I could have worked 119, spent the extra time with my wife. She might have remembered who I was at the end of the week. So we all make these, we have things that we have to do, I'll grant you that. But we don't have to do everything. One of the things we can do is use our four-legged friends as models. And by that I mean when you go on a walk with your dog sees reality. You go out into a park and there's 4 trees in the sun, the dog sees, oddly enough, 4 trees in the sun. But you don't. You don't even see the 4 trees or the sun. You see all the problems that have transpired in your life in the last 24 or 48 hours, and you are anticipating the other problems that are certain to arise, that involve your car and speaking to the choir and the bills coming through the door and that woman in your life and all that sort of thing. Your dog gives you a valuable lesson. Be here now. This is what we have. This is what we have. You were never guaranteed another day. You were never guaranteed another minute. And that crap from the past, that's crap from the past. You can learn from it. It shouldn't define you. And another thing, speaking of crap from the past, we all do this at some level. I'm dressed the way I am because the expectations of others require me to dress this way. I need to look slightly professional, or you won't take me seriously. If I came in here wearing a tank top and shorts, you'd kind of give me that funny look. Wouldn't really matter what I said, would it? Image matters, but we shouldn't let it define us. We need not jump on the treadmill. We need not have every single person in this society pursue an education and then pursue more education and then get married and have 2.5 children and work 40 years until they feel like they're financially safe enough to retire and then start doing the things they want to do. When I say it like that in my out loud voice, you just go, geez, those people must be crazy. And then you think, is that what I'm doing? Ooh. Saw a great sign in the Belize City Airport, of all places, for some tourist company. I liked it. Great motto. There are 7 days in the week, and someday is not one of them. How many times have you said, someday we're going to do this? Someday we're going to do that. Someday we're going to have enough to do this. The day is here. It will seem rather short. There's lots of other things that I could recommend you do, including read some of my books. What could possibly go wrong with that? There's a couple of them back there for sale, hardback and paperback copies of Extinction Dialogues. I don't have copies of the young adult books. You can check all the facts today by looking at this essay with the URL at the top of the page there. You can just go there, and in 32,000 words, you can find out that there's actual evidence, including referee journal literature, to support everything I said. It's all there. I didn't just make this up. Along with my partner, we are offering a workshop for people who have come to grips with near-term human extinction, who believe that we might actually all die, and that our species might go extinct. And that's the Only Love Remains workshop, so that's something else you could do if you were so inclined. Finally, people ask me, okay, smarty pants, what the hell are you doing? And it's a fair question, right? So I suggest all these other things, but some of them seem so amorphous, right? So pursue excellence, pursue love. What do those things mean for you? And so this is what I do in a single short slide. I try to model behavior. I try to act in a calm, rational manner as a model for other human beings on the planet. And of course, I'm criticized roundly for this. Stunningly enough, when I deliver a presentation like this one, and the situation is really dire, I'm pointing out that in all likelihood, we are going to lose habitat for our favorite species, and then our favorite species will vanish from the planet. And I'm pointing that out, and people say, look how calm he is. He must not believe it. If he believed it, he'd be screaming from the rooftops.
If you spoke this in Syria, they'd believe you a lot more easily.
Yes, that's right. If I delivered this message at many places around the globe, they'd be more inclined to believe me than here. Because we're people of relative privilege. We got to take time out of our day to come here tonight. None of us is worried about starving to death today. None of us is worried that the water is going to stop coming out of the taps between now and midnight. None of us is worried about freezing to death tonight or dying because we exceed lethal wet bulb temperatures. But in other parts of the world, that's already happening. I'm pursuing excellence in my own way. I'm a teacher. It's not what I do, it's who I am. So I'm trying to deliver a message, as I've been trying to do for a long time. And I'm actually doing what I love, where I love. I live in... Did the noise go out? It's back? It's a sneaky little button on the bottom here. I should pay attention. I now live in the Central American country of Belize, in the jungle. People think I must have moved there so that I would live longer. When I lived at 34 degrees north latitude in New Mexico at that homestead I told you I helped create, I stored more than a ton each in a root cellar, rice, beans, spaghetti, wheat, and honey, because I really like honey. That's the one that seems like it really stands out, right? Like you gotta have wheat and you gotta have rice, but honey? I like tea. And when I say I like tea, I really like something warm as a carrier for honey. So when I moved from 34 degrees north latitude to 17 degrees north latitude, I got half again closer to the equator, where during heating events, the habitat disappears even faster. So I must have moved the wrong direction. Well, I moved there for love, not for survival. I moved there for love of being out of the country of my birth, which has been really important to me for a long time. I heard essentially my whole life when I was criticizing, when I was acting as a social critic and as a cultural critic about this society, I heard almost every day, love it or leave it. And I chose the third way, which I think is quite honorable. I tried to fix it. I tried to change it, even if it was just at the margins. I tried to make this society better than it otherwise was. And I failed. So I left. I finally got the message. Love it or leave it, fine. I surrender. I'm no longer trying to change society. I'm trying to change individual lives. So I love being out of this country. I love agrarian anarchism. I love the food coming into each village every day or every week, and that serving as the center of the economy for an entire country. I love living in the jungle. I love spending essentially 24 hours a day. I either sweat in the shower or I step out of the shower and I dry myself off, and 3 minutes later I'm in my clothes and they're soaking wet. I love that. Do you understand how little attention people pay to fashion when everybody's walking around soaking wet all the time? It's awesome. I could probably wear nothing at all and nobody'd even notice. I love that. I love agrarian anarchism. I love the focus on living simply. I love that everybody is poor, because then there's not the 1% that we all aspire to be. There's just everybody being poor. When I lived in this country, and I suspect this still happens to some people, you have a flat tire on the interstate, it ruins your day. Right? This has happened to me. I have a flat tire in the interstate, call AAA, they can't be there for 2 hours. I'm sitting there, I could change the tire myself, but I got my good clothes on. So I'm just gonna wait. Okay, finally I changed the tire. It ruins my day. I'm just cranky for a week because I had a flat tire. In Belize, I have on more than one occasion been driving down the road that looks and feels like it has been shelled within the last week by the US Air Force. To call it a freeway would be something of an exaggeration. To call it a road is an exaggeration. It looks like an artillery training ground. And so I'll be bumping along. The locals call it the massage road. I call it the kidney contribution center. And I'm driving along slowly, and I come to a broken down truck that the engine is smoking, and there's 12 kids in the back of the truck, and they're all grinning and laughing, and there's 2 or 3 adults there, and they're grinning and laughing, and you stop. Hey, can we give you a hand? No, his brother knows he's gonna be here in an hour or so. And the people are happy. The car's on fire. And they're like, whatever. It's just a car on fire. I have a flat tire, it ruins my day for a month. I love that. These are the sweetest imaginable people who take seriously the serious things, which is almost nothing. So I'm trying to be more fully present with gratitude for what I have, and I have a lot. I'm a person of enormous privilege. I assumed a tenure-track position at a major university at the age of 29. I was a tenured full professor before the age of 40, something that happens to almost nobody on the planet. That brings with it enormous privilege, enough that I could spend a lot of money creating a homestead in New Mexico on 2.7 acres that is just the premier homestead in light of the impending demise of this set of living arrangements. And I also discussed the unthinkable, obviously. You're a recipient, and perhaps not a happy one, of that. In addition, what I'm doing more recently with the people I share the property with in Belize, and there's about 10 adults and a couple of teenage kids, is researching symptoms and treatments. I suspect that in Belize, at 17 degrees north latitude and 750 feet elevation above sea level, that the 2 leading causes of human mortality in the very near future are going to be exceeding the lethal wet bulb temperature, and therefore being unable to dump heat off of our overheating bodies, and starvation as we are unable to grow food. And we're not prepping. Well, we don't have 5 tons of food in a root cellar. We got like 4 cans of peaches and a little bag of rice and that sort of thing. So we're not preppers like I was once. And so now we're researching what the symptoms look like. So that one of us is out there pounding nails and they get all their skin turns clammy and they feel cold. We know what that means. You know, you're suffering from heat stroke, from heat exhaustion. Here's what we need to do. And at some point, we're not going to be able to do anything. Because we're all going to be experiencing that. And you can't fix that. You can't blow a fan on somebody if it's 95 degrees Fahrenheit and 100% relative humidity. Just blowing a fan on somebody will not save their life, will not extend their life. They will overheat and die. And that's probably going to happen to some of us. I'd like to know. I'd like to know what's going on when I die or when somebody else dies. I don't want it to be a big surprise. I don't want to be interacting with people who are literally going out of their minds because they don't know what's happening to them. So we talk about the unthinkable. And along with the other people on the property, I'm contemplating my exit. I'm not recommending suicide. Okay, well, I am for some people, but not you. I have a list. People come up to me all the time before these presentations, and they walk up to me, and I don't even know these people, right? It's just like you people. I don't know any you people. And somebody, okay, I know Joe. And so somebody walks up to me, I'd never really met this person before, and they look around and they say, so, how are you going to kill yourself? And I'm like, my name is Guy? Hi? Can we start with hi? And I said, listen, I don't think I am going to kill myself. You know, I have a long list of people I want dead, and my name is not on that list. So I think I will wait until it's obvious that the system has failed, that we're in the arena of lethal wet bulb temperature, and then I might kill myself. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it all that much. I do contemplate my exit, and I think about how it would be thoughtful, not just for me, but for the people around me, for the people I leave behind. Because I would never want to commit suicide without thinking about it, right? Without contemplating the impact on the other people. But at some point, if my life becomes so miserable, if your life becomes way more painful for you to continue than to stop, then who am I to say you shouldn't commit suicide? I think it's outrageous that governments make it illegal for people to take their own life. In this country, it's easy. You can get a helium tank, and there's entire organizations that will assist you with setting the whole thing up and making it pretty easy and pretty painless for all concerned. Right? So you can do that. I'm not encouraging it, certainly not for you people. But at some point in the not too distant future, I mean, during this economic collapse of the Soviet Union, that was a big deal, and especially among men of a certain age, mine, because those were the breadwinners. Those are the people that had built the cage based on the bars, the expectations of others. And now they couldn't meet those expectations. Now they were unable to make money because money didn't mean anything in the Soviet Union in the midst of that collapse. So there's a relatively high rate of suicide amongst white men. At some point, you might think about that, and you might think about it in advance. What would it take? You know, along with my radio show co-host, Mike Sleva, at one point we went to the University of Arizona campus and asked students, what would it take for you to do something different? What would it take for you to act like students in this country did in the 1960s and early 1970s? At what point would you leave the country, start a revolution, do something beyond what you're doing today? And we couldn't get a straight answer from anybody. We even asked them, what if, and this is a liberal campus, and students are pretty liberal there, and it's the West. What if, say, Trump were elected president, and this were a year before the election? And everybody said something like, well, I don't think that'll happen, or I don't think that would influence what I would do. Okay, what if the US Army takes over the government? What if the fascism becomes overt and it becomes an actual police state? Well, I think I'd still go to college and blah, blah. My point is that I just want you to think about it. I want you to think about what you're doing every day. When you get out of bed and you've taken care of those bodily functions, think about how you're going to live the day. And when you get to the end of the day, look yourself in the mirror and determine if you succeeded or not. And at some point, maybe it's the compassionate thing. Maybe it's the compassionate thing to think about your own exit. Maybe, maybe not. The first dog I had as an adult with my wife was diagnosed with bone cancer at the age of about 1 year. And we just loved this dog named Mancha, which is Spanish for spot, and we were living in Tucson, so we had a dog named Spot. And then she was diagnosed with brain cancer, and she only lived about a year after that. And she was in terrible pain, and at some point we had to make the decision to end her life. And it was horrible. And I think we waited too long because she suffered greatly at the end. I don't want that to happen to anybody. We're still building things. When I left the homestead about a week and a half ago, there's a building that will have 4 large rooms that will be guest rooms for people on the homestead. And I think there's a pretty good chance I won't be alive in 2 months. And so people ask me, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? We're doing this for 2 reasons. First, and least importantly, we're doing this so that if other people want to have the conversation nobody's willing to have, we'll be able to house them. If my partner's children realize, as Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant is melting down outside of Brooklyn where they live, that that would be a really bad way to go, they decide to come to Belize, we'll have space for them. So that's the first and least important reason. The second, the most important reason that we are still continuing to do things like this is underpinned by 2 ideas. One, we can't predict the future with certainty. We don't know when we will draw our last breath. The best we can do is this is probably it, right? You're dying, but you don't know you're dying, so you think, well, this is probably it. You can't ever actually really know, yeah, this is it. Wouldn't that be great to know that? Wouldn't it be great to have the expiration date stamped on your heel, and wouldn't it be great to, you don't think so? I think so because I can't stand the ambiguity. And we're building community. The people who live on the property are working together. Aristotle defined friendship as a relationship between people working together on a project for the common good. Aristotle did not define friendship as drinking buddies. The beer probably sucked 2,500 years. That's probably why he did it. He defined friendship as a relationship between people working together toward the common good. That's what we're doing here. We're building community. We're building friendships. No matter how long we have, I think you could do worse. Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it, and we'll have plenty of time for questions collectively, and then I'll stay here as long as anybody wants so you can talk to me individually. And now we have a word from the person in charge.
Okay, so he's ready to start taking questions. So, anyone want to start?
It's very difficult to find people that will talk about these things. How do you do it? Because most people will not have this discussion.
I don't know how you do it. I've done it really, really, really poorly. I'm getting better at it, but as I indicated in the beginning, I was the medical doctor who doesn't give a crap about anything except the golf game, and who, if I just present the evidence, you will fully accept it, and go off and live according. I'm not your personal counselor, right? This is the medical doctor's approach. Now there are other people in the medical profession who deal with that part, who deal with hospice, who deal with the psychological and emotional aspects of being given a terminal diagnosis. And so I've tried to work that kind of information into my presentation, so it's way different than the way I was talking 5 years ago. But it's such a hard conversation to have because this culture does not encourage us to talk about anything that really matters. So how do you do that? You know, for me, and I'm reminded as I often am of a Bob Dylan song, Tangled Up in Blue. She's married when we first met, soon to be divorced. Got her out of a jam, I guess, used a little too much force. So for a long time what I did is everybody who I came across, even if it was the poor woman sitting next to me in the window seat and I had the aisle seat, no matter what she said, I assumed that meant she wanted to talk about abrupt climate change leading to near-term human extinction. So I thought hello was some sort of acronyms for let's have the conversation. And so that's what, I mean, I was brute force. I was a T-Rex in a crystal factory. I was just, you know, I come up to somebody on the street, hey, how you doing? Thanks for asking. I mean, that's curious that you want to talk about human extinction like that. So I'm not sure I would have this conversation. I think it's important with people close to you, with people you encounter every day, with your family members. But it can be a shattering experience. Almost never do I find a couple on the same page, or even anywhere close. And that's hard. That's very hard. When one person thinks that the infinite growth paradigm will work out just fine for the next 100 years, and or who believes the IPCC or Michael Mann or other conservative climate scientists and their figures, and then the other member of the party thinks that we should live with urgency, thinks that we don't have long left, that can cause a rift. I get that. So maybe it's best not to talk about it. Maybe it's best in that sort of situation that you just continue with the same old nonsensical cultural lies with which your entire life has been afflicted. Who am I to say? Just don't talk about anything that matters. It certainly has been incredibly destructive to the relationships in my life to have that conversation. On the other hand, it's been remarkably rewarding. Yes, I lost all my coworkers, colleagues, ex-friends, ex-family members, all of them, all done. Every relationship shattered, destroyed because of my stunning ability to act like a T-Rex in a crystal factory. And along the way, I've encountered a few other T-Rexes. I've encountered people who I consider my friends, who are willing, eager even, to have every penetrating, radical conversation. It can come at a cost, just like everything else we do. There's a cost associated with not acting, of not talking about it. You don't know what that is. You can find out the cost associated with talking with it, and it might be high. Great question. I wish I had the answer.
Because I think I kind of have a formation with symptoms. So, and there's someone I know who is very passionate, but I'm not always sure of the validity of their information. Have you ever heard the term Canfield Ocean?
Sorry.
Canfield Ocean.
Oh, yeah. Have I heard the term Canfield Ocean? Yes. Popularized by
In his book, Under a Green Sky from 2007. Yes. So I'm familiar with the Canfield Ocean. Did you have a question?
Well, I mean, I wasn't sure as to really like that, what it was, because the
Okay.
person who brought it up was somewhat confused.
Right. So
Coined the phrase Canfield Ocean. You can Google it and find out more than I'm going to be able to tell you, but briefly, it's a toxic soup that is emitting sulfur and turns the sky green. That's the title of the book, Under a Green Sky. So that the sky actually at the horizon looks green instead of blue because the toxic ocean is emitting chemicals at such a high rate. And Robert Scribbler, actually Robert Fanny, who writes under the name Robert Scribbler at his blog, has written quite extensively about the Canfield Ocean. So that's probably the one-stop shop I would go to for that particular event. Now, I think he's incredibly optimistic to the point of delusion with respect to the timeline of climate change. But he has some great information about Canfield Ocean. Robert Scribbler, and his blog, I think is Scribbler's blog or something like that. But if you just type in Robert Scribbler at your favorite search engine, I'm sure it'll come right up. And he has lots of essays he's written about the Canfield Ocean. And he does a great job linking to the referee journal literature, to the conservative sources, so you can go read the abstract. And these days, most of the papers are inaccessible to the public, but the abstract is available to the public. And that's probably as much as most of you could tolerate reading anyway, because it has that kind of language I pointed out before that you can't really even understand. So the media, in this case, actually does a pretty good job of translating the science into something that's readable. Yeah.
Ordinarily, I wouldn't ask this question, but I'm curious, and you keep saying people don't talk about things that are important. People don't have hard questions. Whatever. I'm going to ask a question, but if you don't feel like answering it, just don't. Why do you think you might not be alive in 2 months?
Alive in 2 months. I think we're long overdue for a global financial crisis again. I think Tom Hartman's book, The Crash of 2016, was remarkably conservative, and that we've managed to delay the inevitable. But I think it's highly probable that we will have such an event this September. And when that happens, whenever it happens, civilization cannot be sustained, period. It's just a matter of timing. Now we have more than $20 trillion officially that the US is in debt. Unofficially, it's at least 10 times that high. More than 20 trillion, even if it's just at $20 trillion, that's more money, more fiat currency that is printed and available in the entire world, plus the value of all the gold ever mined in the history of the world. That's how much we owe. It was 8 trillion 8 years ago. It's 20 trillion today, more than 20 trillion today. So we have significant endemic problems with the economy, and it's barely being propped up. And in light of passing the global peak in net energy, and because of the debt issue, I think the house of cards just could easily come down in September. And living as I do near the tropics means we run out of habitat almost immediately. Even if that doesn't happen, an ice-free ocean this year, and that seems pretty likely to me, consistent with the U.S. Naval Postgraduate College's prediction of an ice-free Arctic in 2016, plus or minus 3 years. If that happens, then we get methane spewing. It's already really hot. The rainy season there is really, really quite uncomfortable. And so we're already seeing the symptoms I'm talking about. We're already seeing the people who work on the property experiencing symptoms of overheating, of heat exhaustion. We're not getting too hungry yet because the grocery stores are still open. We're still able to grow vegetables. We got mangoes like crazy and citrus like crazy on the property. We've still got lots of food. But we're already seeing symptoms of heat stroke, and it's early. It's early in the melt season for the Arctic. It's early in the warm season for Belize. So even if we don't have a financial collapse, it still could get too hot. And I'm old. I love it when you all laugh like that. because I know you're laughing with me. I'm not the person I was 10 years ago. And so it's increasingly difficult for this aging body to act like it did when it was 20 years old. You know, I just don't have the resilience physically.
There's one over here.
Hi guys, love your work. Followed you for some time. Could you, I have so many questions, but I'm just going to ask this sort of at an asterisk. Could you lay out a scenario, say Donald wants to go after North Korea and a nuclear weapon is exploded either high in the atmosphere or on the ground?
I know, you think you're so loud. Hey, love your work. Say, could you talk about nuclear things a little bit? Say, nuclear detonated in the atmosphere or on the ground, or just how that may affect the climate and scenarios, please. Thank you.
You know, Michael C. Rupert used to quote Tolstoy all the time. And the line goes something like this: if there's a gun that appears by the second act, it will go off by the third act. If there's a gun on the wall, or if the gun that shows up in the play, then it will go off. And governmental leaders know what I know. My work is in the public sphere. I'm quoting other people's science. So this is widely known information for people in the Trump administration, for Putin. Anybody who wants to know can pretty easily know what I know. Do desperate times call for desperate measures? Are they desperate enough that somebody would launch a nuclear weapon, or that lands someplace, or that scatters material high in the atmosphere to try to increase global dimming? Maybe. You know, things are so tenuous economically, things are so tenuous in the world right now because we're past peak almost everything that matters with respect to propping up the economy. We're post-peak conventional oil, so the petrodollar teeters on the brink. At what point do the sociopaths in charge come to the conclusion that if the house of cards is coming down anyway and that's going to kill us all in the not too distant future, then I might as well launch the bomb. I might as well do something extreme. If you're trapped in the corner, if you're a wild animal trapped in the corner, and other wild animals, like say humans, are moving in and trying to capture you, how wild are you going to act? How desperate do you become? So it could very well be that people with influence will become desperate enough to do something that I would consider insane. Well, what will be the response? Well, I think this falls into the category of solar radiation management. We can, as Paul Beckwith has pondered, we can launch hydrogen bombs out into the desert just to put dust up there into the atmosphere to act as solar radiation management. But there's abundant evidence, and the two big synthetic reports in the United States and Europe, National Academy of Sciences in the United States, body of similar stature in Europe, indicating that won't help. In fact, what Pinatubo shows, and there's much more evidence today, Pinatubo was the volcano that went off, I think in 1987, something like that, and 92, thank you. 1992, so global average temperature was going like this, going up, going up, going up, stabilized, actually went down about 0.5 degrees for a year or two, and then continued on the path it was before and actually accelerated within the first couple of years. And that's the expectation under solar radiation management. We're going like this. If we cool it, it'll take a little dive down, and then it'll accelerate even faster to sort of catch up with the previous line it was on. So that's my expectation. But We don't know because we've never done something so maniacal at scale. Right, the United States has dropped a couple of nuclear bombs here and there, mostly for sport. Really? I mean, Japan already surrendered before we dropped the first one. So, is the United States government, is this Russian government, is the Chinese government, is anybody insane enough to actually launch nuclear war? Wouldn't surprise me. Despite the fact that the science indicates the outcome would not particularly improve the situation with respect to the climate, because we just don't know. If you're the wild animal in the corner and all these people are coming at you with knives, you know what's going to happen if you don't do something. You're going to die. So maybe you'll bark like mad and bite everything you can. Maybe that's what we'll do. I don't know. It's a crazy world.
What was maybe some examples of the most intrusive or brazen government intervention in your life over the years?
That's an interesting question. See, I don't even know. You know, isn't that funny? You know, yeah, I mean, there's some things I've noticed and some things I've been told. Apparently, there's this NSA contracted spy who was in my classroom, at least he told me that, who sent me heavily redacted documents indicating I'd been surveilled since 1996. I found this out in 2015, right? So years after the fact, I find out that probably I'd been surveilled because I was modeling classroom anarchism and teaching that anarchism is another way to live. And, you know, governments are not big fans of anarchism, oddly enough. And so there was probably all kinds of disruption going on. If that spy is to be believed, and we have to remember that he might not even be a spy. He might be lying about that. He might be just trying to get attention, and he might just be a complete whack job. I don't know. He might be in the audience right now. I'm not saying you are all whack jobs, but any one of you might be. And if he is a spy, then he's paid to lie. So I think there's a good chance that he or she or it or them are lying all the time. I don't know. But let's assume that Mark Austin is actually an NSA contracted spy, and that he actually was in my classroom in 2005, and that he actually was surveilling me from 1996 on. Then I suspect among the things that the deep state did were influence the hiring of my final department head, who was the only person I knew well enough, who I loved enough to pour my heart out to, and then have her tell me that I'm not allowed to teach her in her department anymore, which ultimately led to my departure from the university. So that could be. That was the first administrative act of my final department head, was to ban me from teaching in my home department, and I'm an outstanding teacher. So that might be. I mean, apparently I was dangerous then. Now I'm a resource because I collect and collate and synthesize information that 300 government analysts can't put together when it comes to connecting the dots on abrupt climate change leading to our ultimate demise. Because they can't, right? So you work for the CIA or the FBI or whoever. You have a degree in business management or some foreign language or Russian studies or whatever. But you probably don't know much about ecology and conservation biology. So I suspect at this point that they might be keeping me alive. Almost every time I fly, I get TSA pre-check. I've never asked. I've never applied for it. And yet, at random, every time I go get my boarding passes, they say TSA pre-check on them. Almost every time. And so what that means is I can just walk through the security stuff and leave my laptop in the bag and leave my shoes on, keep my jacket on. And I go through and I go through the other side and I'm this close every time to saying, do you people know who I am? It's weird. Last time I flew out of this country, it was December of last year. I flew out of Miami ultimately. And I'm walking up to the security thing, to the, the x-ray machine, and it's like from me to the camera, from me to Dave, and between me and him there's that zigzag thing, the velvet rope that you got back and forth. And so I'm only this far away, I'm like 25 feet away from the security guy who's sitting there by the x-ray machine, and he looks up and he says, "I'm sorry, Mr. McPherson, we can't give you a TSA pre-check today." I'm like, "Do I know you?" And so then I go back and forth, and he says, "Yeah, your passport doesn't have a space between the muck and the Ferson. And your boarding pass, they put a space in there, so we can't give you it." And I'm like, "How do you know my name? Have we met?" And he was apologizing for not giving me TSA pre-check, something I've never applied for, but that I always get for some strange reason. So there's some weird stuff happening. There's other examples. There's people who know me. So I get to go scot-free, right, through the whole thing, no security check for Guy McPherson. But people who have met me on tour, this is you now, have all kinds of horrible things happen to them. There's a guy I met in Michigan just a couple of times. I went out to his place, he fed me lunch, he came to one of my presentations, but we really barely know each other. And he was flying into Canada, and the Canadian equivalent of the Homeland Security people, or whoever stops you at the US border and does the security check. The Canadian equivalent of those guys pulled him off to the side and put him in a room and downloaded the contents of his laptop and interrogated him for an hour, and they just asked him one question 20,000 times. "What's your relationship to Guy McPherson?" Seriously? That's what he told me. He has no reason to lie to me about that. It's not the kind of thing he would just make up. So these kinds of things, kind of weird things happen to people. There's some significant media personality in a major Western metropolitan area that's as precise as I want to get. And he contacted me via email, and he said, "Man, you got this figured out." This is a few years ago. He said, "I'm going to start featuring your work all the time." And I'm like a big deal on the radio and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Sure, yeah, whatever." And then he writes to me 2 weeks later, and he says, "I don't know you, and you don't know me. I never even heard of you." He said, "I get these email messages, and they tell me terrible things that are going to happen to me and my family. And then I go to read them the next day, and they have disappeared. They're vanished. They're off of my computer. They were there yesterday, and now they're gone." And he says his computer goes on and off and blah, blah, the same old stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. There's weird stuff happens, but is it all coincidence? It might be. I don't know. I think strange things have happened to me, but I think I've had a pretty weird life.
I was asking this back in 2005. I spoke some truth to power about Abu Ghraib right after it happened, and let me tell you, I felt some of the stuff you're talking about too, the special services when flying, and people coming into your life who are just very interested in specific things and have very odd personalities, and then they're evaporating. And I was interested in hearing your experiences. Thank you.
Things that happen, and I suspect that the deep state, for lack of a better term, is involved in really everything. For example, it's now widely known for anybody who wants to look that it was the CIA that established the European Union. Why? Because the CIA is interested in destabilizing or stabilizing various parts of the globe. How important is the CIA? Well, there's a little-known painter who was throwing paint on canvas. He wasn't particularly talented, but he was passionate. And now Jackson Pollock is a household name. Why? Because the CIA turned him into a household name. And you can spend 20 minutes online, you can find out that there's actual evidence to support these statements. We needed to, during the Cold War, we needed to convince our citizenry that we were more sophisticated than those godless communists in the Soviet Union. So the CIA did all kinds of weird things. Gloria Steinem was on the payroll. Distraction. 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 It's all part of the show. So, I mean, I could spend all day talking about this, but then you'd think I'm even crazier than you already think. Last thing I need is opportunities for people to say that I don't know anything about climate change because I talk about these conspiracy theories, a term promulgated, popularized by the CIA in 1967, conspiracy theory, to disparage people who were able to connect 3 dots. So, I'll stop there.
I just wanted to ask you, I'm a journalist for the Cap Times, and I've talked to you before and done a column on you a couple of years ago. And I'm wondering, I missed the first half of your presentation. I'm wondering if the PowerPoint, which I assume you used, is online somewhere. Is it?
I'm more than the PowerPoint file that I used. If you have a thumb drive, we can just copy it to it before you leave. It'll be online if Dave has the time as a volunteer to put the video and the audio online, maybe in a week or... I think all the slides I showed appear in a presentation I did in Missouri in May. You can find that at guymcpherson.com. And I just changed the order and changed some of the emphasis because I get bored listening to myself speak. So I put random slides in there so that when they come up I go, what? Just to keep me on my toes. But really, if anybody wants any of these files, just let me know, I'll send them to you.
So that state of Delaware broke off of Larsen Sea. There's a big iceberg down there.
The Larsen Sea ice shelf, just to bring everybody up to speed, the Larsen Sea ice shelf broke off, something that mainstream climate scientists said would not happen for hundreds of thousands of years.
3 days ago, it's an iceberg the size of Delaware that broke off. It's sea ice. So it was floating already. It will not contribute to sea level rise, but it serves as a dam for a whole bunch of land ice, for terrestrial ice, that now has ready access to the ocean. Yeah.
How long do you think it'll take to melt, and where might it go? Just wondering.
Yeah.
It's going to melt faster than expected, because that's true of every article you read. A few years ago, I spoke in the Pacific Northwest, and in my wake, somebody created a blog called Faster Than Expected at fasterthanexpected.com, and she just posts articles from mainstream sources like that one, mainstream stories about all the things that are happening on the climate front that mainstream scientists every time are shocked, right? Almost every day you can read an article in the mainstream that includes a scientific response from university scientists, and the scientists are shocked, they're in awe, they're amazed, they're stunned. They never thought this would happen so soon. This is the kind of thing that's supposed to happen in 2100. This is the kind of thing that happens in the next few centuries. On and on it goes, because the mainstream scientists don't have the slightest clue that we're in an event called abrupt climate change. Abrupt, irreversible climate change does not mean gradual, we can fix it climate change.